rays being shot back and forth and so forth. But now we get to the Roswell incident in 1947. Colonel Philip Corso, heard about. But actually, there were two crashes that afternoon, one on the Brazil Ranch and one on the Corona Ranch, at least I think it was some distance away. But anyway, he was one of the first individuals to actually gain access to this craft and found several devices that were on board this craft. It's in the book, that's if you want to get your hands on it, The Day After Roswell. But anyway, from that point on, we've had all of this thing of benevolent sources, which I am with, and other sources which attempt to be evidently interferers or interlopers, as Rick Williamson called them in his book, that Other Tongues, Other Flesh. But anyway, it's with my sources, it's been very benevolent. They've been very helpful to me and to other individuals whom I've done consultations with, including Marcel Vogel, Zahi Hawass of Egypt, White Bear Fredericks of the Hopi Nation, who's now gone, and Brad Steiger, and also I have met and was friends with the director of The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original film of The Day the Earth Stood Still. In fact, we have a photograph in color of Bob and myself and my wife having dinner in Palm Springs. And when he saw the outtakes from the picture that we were able to access in San Francisco, and they were black and white, glossies, 8x10s, and he said, where in, and pardon my French, where in the hell did you get these? And I told him, he said, do you realize how valuable these are? And I said, certainly. He said, well, what do you plan on doing? I said, I'm not going to sell them, Bob. That's for damn sure. I said, these will remain with me as long as I'm alive. And there are 3 or 4 of them showing Gort, Michael Rene, and so forth. Now, Gort was actually, at times, it was a rubberized suit looking like metal being worn by Lochner Martin Sr., who was about 7.5 foot tall. At one point in time, I had a job with Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood, and he used to greet the people coming out of their cars to buy tickets. And he stood that tall and had about size, I think, 18 shoes, about 1.5 size more wider than my hands, or bigger than my hands, and very wonderful fellow, very wonderful man. I don't know how much longer that after that picture that he remained, but I understand that Lochner Martin Jr. or Richard Keel, that was in Moonraker, was his son. But anyway, it was interesting that occurred with Bob. Now, Joe, you know his last name, right?
Who's that? Bob Weiss?
Yeah, Bob Weiss, right, correct,
right.
Yeah. And also he attended one of the conventions that we attended that Tim Beckley put on in Palm Springs, where he also was present, and we enjoyed his company there. And, of course, unfortunately, Bob is gone now. And also is Michael Rene, by the way.
Yeah, I think everybody from that film is pretty much faded in history at this point.
Yeah, he did also, there was another picture made in England that was The Stranger from Venus with Helmut Dantine, upon I think which this picture may have been, The Day There Still may have been based somewhat on. But anyway...
so Robert, was there truth in the movie? I mean, was...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Professor Barnhart was really, you know who that was, with the real crazy hair and so forth, the science from Princeton University.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
And that was attempted to portray that individual, and then also the fact that Michael Rene was able to contact his superiors over his viewer set on board the ship. And the ship actually is based upon Adamski's, one of Adamski's contacts, the master craft, which has a corridor all the way around inside, and then an entryway into the control section. And Patricia Neal, of course, was in the movie, and Hugh Marlowe was in the movie, and Bobby Gray was also the boy in the movie, and so on. So there was quite a cast. But anyway, a lot of that film was also very, very prophetical. Okay, it was made in a very short period of time.
All right, Reverend. We've got about
51, by the way.
1951. Clues were already been laid out in front of the people as to what was shortly to come. All right, Radiohead takes us to the break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Scott Stevens, Barb Adams, Joe Fix with you on America Now. We are talking to one of the earliest contactees of space intelligences, which is kind of an interesting way of putting it. We didn't have aliens or ETs at that point in time. It was a space intelligence because most of that was done telepathically. What was so important or special about that rock, Reverend? Why the gathering?
It was the first gathering of individuals from around the world, and I mean around the world, for a flying saucer convention. The first one was held in the late spring of 1954, and the first speaker was an engineer by the name of Daniel W. Fry, who at the time that he had his first contact was working for the Atomic Energy Commission in White Sands, New Mexico. And he was walking across the desert one evening when he spotted this craft, or spotted what apparently was a flying saucer to all intents and purposes, and he gingerly walked up to it, and he began to stroke it, and he heard a voice say, "Get away, bud, it's still hot." And it was evidently he was rubbing the field of the object. It actually was a cargo carrier, and it invited him to get on board, and they took him over to New York City and back in something like a half an hour. And from that point on, he had his contacts, but he was the first speaker at Giant Rock to give forth his story to the waiting public, and they gathered as many times as 10,000 to 12,000 people out there from all over the world for these conventions, and they lasted from that year on through 1978. And in the meantime, at Giant Rock, I was told to find this place, the big rock in the desert, where I wanted to know more about them. Well, the lady that my mother met in her restaurant, Jim Cagney's personal secretary at the time, evidently, when she was asked where it was, because I asked my mother about it, and she said something about 29 Palms. So I got a map, and I found 29 Palms, and I said, okay, now where's the big rock? Well, there was no big rock. So finally I said, listen, if you're not going to tell me where it is, I'm going to put you to a challenge. You're going to show me how to get there. You got that? Mm-hmm. I just said that like I'm talking to you. And so anyway, I said, this one particular evening, I said, okay, now I'm ready. You're going to show me how to get there. Put some food and some water in my car, some bedding, and had a Hudson Terraplane at the time, coupe, and I drove out the old highway out through San Bernardino and out the highway like I was going down to Palm Springs or the lower desert, and I found a highway going up to the upper desert, and I continued on out that way like toward 29 Palms, and I got to a town called Joshua Tree, and this was about between 10 and 10:30 at night by that time. And it just so happened there was a 76 station still open, and I pulled in there, and I told him I needed some gas, and he said, you're very lucky. I just got ready to turn the pumps off. And while he was doing it, I said, by the way, could you tell me where I could find this big rock in the desert? He looked at me kind of funny. He said, yeah, Mac. He said, take a look around. They're all over the place. I said, well,
everybody's a wise guy, right?
So I pulled out of the station finally, and I said to nobody in particular, I said, okay, now if you want me to find how I get there, I said, you tell me. I'm on my way to 29 Palms. Well, I went down about 5 blocks, and I heard a voice, just like I'm talking to you, said, take the road to the left. I said, what? Take the road to the left. I said, okay, and I turned onto a paved street, believe it or not, and I kept going, and finally it stopped. The pavement stopped, and it was a dirt road out ahead of me, and I could see these distant lights, and I thought, where in the heck, So I stopped. I said, okay, now where do I go? Nothing came. I said, now where do I go? Nothing. I said, okay, I'm going to keep on going out this dirt road because you're not stopping me. And ways I got out there, and finally at a